Hey Sword Gang, Miles Kinney here, and I am following up with you on that little survey about injuries in HEMA that I gave last week. If you're late to the party, I was kind of, asking myself some questions, thinking deep thoughts as I often do, and and I thought, hey, this would be something useful if I could, just ask you folks for a little bit of information on injuries that you've sustained over your HEMA career. And you folks responded like I couldn't believe, with over 400 respondents. All right, that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. You gave me some of your time. I'm going to make sure that I give you some of my time, and I'm going to go over your responses in the survey. Okay. If you're wondering who I am, I'm nobody from nowhere. My name is Miles Kinney. Some years ago, I founded a little HEMA club in Charlottetown, PEI. A couple years later, I moved provinces to New Brunswick here in Canada, started another HEMA club at that point. A third HEMA club joined us, led by Phil Swift in St. John's, Newfoundland. And now the MSS family of clubs is at 3 clubs. And, as we get bigger, I find that I have to ask myself more questions about our organization, right? And what we're doing to kind of professionalize and take ourselves to the next level. And something has always been a constant for us has been the fact that we're so isolated. I don't know if you know anything about the Maritimes, the Atlantic provinces of Canada. We're out there in the middle of nowhere. It's expensive to get in and out. It's expensive to get HEMA gear, and we always feel a little kind of disconnected from the greater community at large, and we don't always get all the information like people who are a part of bigger scenes do, right? So I really rely on the HEMA hive mind to help me fill in the gaps. And all of our practitioners do. We really rely on that to help us fill in the gaps of what's happening in the community, right? And even with that great resources, still sometimes it's a little bit hard to find the answers that we're looking for, right? So I've been thinking a lot about injuries in HEMA, and we haven't had very many over the years, but we have had some, more so in our early days before we were official, right? And I guess I'm just asking myself, okay, well, is there any way that we can measure injuries in HEMA? And that's where this little survey came from. Okay, and you might ask, what is that to you? Well, I was reading a thread recently, and 2 higher profile practitioners both made similar posts. It was Miles Cup and Brittany St. Leafy. And something that they both said that I thought was super insightful and really kind of, changed how I thought a little bit, was they talked about how HEMA was a grassroots movement that was pretty autonomous, and a lot of folks kind of liked it that way, right? So when I thought about doing this survey, right, I thought, okay, well, maybe this is a resource that I can just provide to all those autonomous groups, all those grassroots groups, and then folks can just do whatever they want with the information. They ignore it, they look at it, they build up on it. We can talk about that a little bit, how we can build up on this information, right? And we can benefit from it even more. But regardless, I thought, hey, I could use this, so lots of people could use this, and I really think this can be of value to the individual practitioner. I think it can be valuable to club runners. I think that it can be valuable to instructors, and I really think that it can be valuable to people who are getting off of the ground, just starting to spread their HEMA wings, right? Because part of HEMA being an autonomous grassroots movement is that it is growing, right? It's growing, and not around any centralized body, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? But it's growing. So what I've observed in the hive mind is that we get new people all the time coming in, and they want to start their study groups, they want to start their club, they want to get going, right? And I think that having data that we've measured that relates to injuries can be really, really, really good, a really great resource for new practitioners, for all those people who are in regional places that feel disconnected from the community like us, this can be really, really valuable, right? And can inform a lot of their decisions about their club culture. All right. But over the course of this, I don't want to draw too many conclusions, right? This really exists to give you the information so that you can make your own decisions on what to do with it, okay? Beyond that, I think that this is actually a good opportunity to start to talk to professionals in the community, people who have something to contribute to this area, right? Because what we have here is this little non-scientific survey, right? I'm nobody from nowhere. But if we take those ideas and we take that response, that huge response that we got, that tells me that a lot of people are really interested in this subject. And if we start to kind of, build some lines of communication, right? We can start to talk to people who this is kind of their area of expertise, or it's something that they've been trained on in their post-secondary education, right? And their input can be really, really valuable. Everyone's input can be really, really valuable. And we can start to put together something that's more scientific, that gets better data. Because the questions that I ask, they don't account for a lot of things, right? It doesn't tell you exactly what discipline somebody was practicing when they got injured. One of the biggest issues is that there's no timeline associated with this data, okay? When you look at data from sports organizations, most professional sports organizations are collecting this data, and they're doing it yearly, and they're releasing reports yearly on what's happening with injuries in their sport, right? And if we take the idea and we start to expand on it, maybe we translate it for people in communities in different parts of the world. Now we start to get a clearer picture of what disciplines the injuries are taking place in, and even where they are regionally, and we can start to account for a lot of other factors. And then that kind of grows our mitigation strategy, right? Because that's what this is about for me, is that by getting the clear information, that informs my mitigation strategy, and that mitigation strategy is really the key for me in what I want to do with this, okay? So I hope that's an okay introduction. I hope that introduces things to everyone. As far as timeline goes, I would love to release this video, start getting feedback in the comments, start to see if there's interest for folks to participate in a bigger, more scientific survey. And then if we get that response, I'll start looking at maybe a 2-week timeline to put together a bigger survey, and then release that out into the community and see if we can take this data to the next level, okay? So let's take a look at that data. I held you hostage with the introduction long enough. Let's go, okay? Let's get into this data, okay? So first off, I'm going to be approaching this kind of from the risk management standpoint, right? Where how I'm interpreting it internally is we're taking all of these different areas, right? And we're looking at them, and we're looking, how serious the potential injury is, and then looking at the frequency of it, right? And that lets us assign different levels to that injury, right? There's a little graphic over there, okay, just to give you a quick look at how I'm approaching this, okay? But the first question that you folks were asked was, have you ever been injured in HEMA, okay? We got 95% yes, 5% no, okay? Don't worry, the sky isn't falling, all right? This is an injury survey. We asked for injuries. That's what we got. People who were injured responded to this, right? So those numbers might seem pretty dire, but I want you to bear in mind that we still don't really know how many people are active practitioners. And again, there was no time limit on the survey, right? So this is people reporting across their entire HEMA careers, and we got lots of responses from people who were in for over a decade. I'm pretty sure we got some first generation respondents, some really interesting stuff, okay? So I just want you to bear in mind that 95%, the sky isn't falling, okay? Okay, question 2. during training or during a tournament. We got 69% during training and 29% during the tournament, okay? I think you can interpret that a couple different ways, so I'll leave that up to you folks, okay? And I guess how I look at it is that you spend a lot more time training and a lot less time in tournaments. So, I interpret it as a higher frequency of injuries in tournaments. You may not. That's totally fine, okay? But we're at 69 and 31 on question 2, which was, were you injured in training or a tournament? So, for question 3, I asked, have you received the following injuries, okay? And I'm going to need to look at my script a little bit for this one, okay? Because it's hard to remember all the data, okay? But I think that this kind of reflects a lot of the stuff that we kind of knew that we were going to see. We see concussions at 58, broken bones at 128, lacerations at 98, punctures at 39, contusions, which are bruises, at 328. I'm surprised that's not 100% of respondents. We have sprains at 109, strains at 125, hyperextension at 59, collapse at 4, shortness of breath at 44, and 1 cardiac episode, okay? Now, the anecdotes really told me that there was a lot that wasn't accounted for here, okay? So in a second survey, we'd really expand on that, okie dokie. And I guess that's what my key takeaways from this are actually the concussions, the punctures, and the lacerations, okay? Concussions, punctures, and lacerations to me are the extreme risk areas. That's where I'd be looking at. The second area I'd be looking at is that broken bones, and I think that we all know a lot of those broken bones are coming from hands. Okay, so let's take a look at the next question. So for question 4, I asked what part of your body has been injured. So I'm gonna have to look at the graph again for this one, folks. Okay. We see head at 123, okay? That's pretty, I think, maybe that's a little high, right? 123 injuries, head injuries, 30 to the neck, 22 to the collarbone, 136 to the shoulders, 144 to the upper arms, 81 to the elbow, 193 to the forearm, 245 to the fingers, okay? 245 to the fingers, right? That's a big number for me, and definitely something that I'm going to be building my mitigation strategies around. 182 for the thumbs, 19 for the solar plexus, 76 for the abdomen, 23 for the groin, 31 for the hips, 125 for the thighs, 71 for the knees, 44 for the shins, 43 for the ankles, 16 for the feet, and 16 for the toes. Alrighty, folks. So again, you take that information and you do whatever you want to do with it. But I think that in a broader survey, we could kind of dial in the circumstances on those a little bit, right? Because right now I'm kind of going on gut a lot to interpret these numbers, but I think that we could get a lot better results by taking a more scientific look at this, okay? Question 5 was, how would you rate the severity of your most damaging injury? Alrighty, folks, let's take a look at this. So, at 1 at least severe and 5 at most severe, we have 13.6%. 59 people were at 1. 120 people, almost 28%, were at a 2. 140 people, which would be 32.26% people, were right in the middle. 17.97, so 18% at 78 people were at a 4, and then 5%, 22 people were at a 5. Okay, and in the anecdotes, there were definitely some folks who outright stated that their injury ended their HEMA career. Okay, for whatever reason. All right, so I think that some of those 5s are in there. Question number 6. Was medical attention required? 47.47% said yes. 48.85% said no. So this is almost split down the middle as to whether or not the injury required medical attention, right? And again, I'm going to let you interpret that however you want. I'm not sure what I think about that number. 50-50. I think that bears a little bit of extra thought, right? And maybe, you know, in a bigger survey, more fields that could possibly, you know, account for different kinds of medical attention, right? If you needed a first responder, if you were in the ER, if it was stitches, cast, you know, a CAT scan, whatever it is, right? And then question number 7 was aftercare, I use the example as physio required, and 34% said yes, 62% said no. Okay, so there's a pretty significant, you know, portion, about 1/3 of people who reported in this injury survey did require some form of aftercare. So again, I think that's pretty significant and worth looking at, kind of in your broader plan, right? How you're approaching your club and what you're doing, and it's definitely something that I'm taking special note of. So at the end of the survey, I asked a couple questions, right? Some more free-form stuff where you could give us your thoughts, okay? Of course, I can't, you know, directly release that stuff because it's an anonymous survey, right? For obvious reasons. But I can say that it was very, very, very enlightening as far as how it informs how I kind of want to move forward with this. A lot of my thoughts, revolving around refining a more scientific survey, really come from this anecdotal section, right? Now, and I'll share a little bit of data from it with you, okay? 124 people decided to tell their story, right? And from that, 9% described permanent injuries, okay? Another 16, which would be 13%, took 2 months to recover. In the 124 comments, 52 specified the discipline involved in their injury, and that was 21 to longsword, 16 to grappling and wrestling, 6 to military saber, 5 to single sword, and 4 to rapier, okay? And I think those numbers are a little skewed because I think most respondents came from the HEMA Alliance Facebook group, which I think does skew towards longsword. So, you know, in future iterations, I'd really love to see folks from the other communities really contributing to this and choosing to respond to the next iteration of the survey. That'll give us all of us huge information about what's happening in the discipline that we prefer, and can really just help us refine our personal risk mitigation strategies that much more. So I think that was pretty painless, right? You got some good information. I laid out the framework for what you can use this for, how we can make this even better, refine it, create a bigger, better system that will let us kind of do status checks year after year, see how we're trending with our injuries, if our mitigation is working or not working, and I think maybe set a precedent sort of for how our community can address some of these things in a really collaborative, crowdsourced way. All right. So I hope you bear with me. I hope that you contribute to the conversation about a more scientific survey, and I hope that you stay tuned. And hey, I hope that you enjoyed this and that you found it informative in some way. And I hope that you have a tremendous day. Peace out.